Saturday, September 3rd, 2022, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today we're going to look at how Russell Brand is completely wrong about the cost of living crisis, about inflation. He's got no clue, and he's got a very dangerous message, I think, because he's blaming the symptoms instead of looking at the underlying causes of inflation. And I usually don't do these kind of videos criticizing other YouTubers, but I think this is necessary because he's got so many followers here in the UK and also in the US. He made a video yesterday entitled "It's Happening Now," and it's already got 500,000 views. And there's no mention of the 1971 detachment of our monetary system from gold. There's no mention of the '08 crisis when the government and the Bank of England, with the help of the Bank of England, helped bail out not just the banks, but homeowners who had mortgaged themselves up to here. There's no mention of the 2020 crisis, the repo crisis. That was named the COVID crisis later on, where they threw trillions and trillions of dollars into the major economies, where governments paid people to stay at home, not doing anything, paid companies to keep people employed, furlough scheme. There's no mention of that. And there's no mention of almost 15 years of zero interest rates and massive QE, of course, by central banks. Where we've seen the major central banks of the world going from around 5 trillion in assets to over 30 trillion. No mention of that. So, yeah, I think it's a dangerous message he has here, because looking at the symptoms and blaming the symptoms will make sure that we don't look at the real cause. And I think that's a shame. And I have to say, I do subscribe to his channel, and my wife as well. She listens to him, and I listen to him sometimes, and he's got some very good points on other subjects. But in this one, I have to bring him up on it. And I'm going to use this book, which I have referenced many times, and hopefully a lot of you have read it already. And if not, I recommend you do. And I also recommend Russell Brand reads this book. I made a comment on his video saying he should read this book, and it's When Money Dies by Adam Ferguson, the nightmare of the Weimar hyperinflation. So just like people back then, the people who were blaming anything but the money printing, they weren't looking at the bigger picture. They weren't looking back to the start of World War I, when the German government started borrowing and borrowing to finance that war. Just like Russell Brand, he's not going back. Well, he's not even going back to 2020, let alone 1971. So I've taken a couple of passages here from this book. The first one is actually in the introduction, or the prologue by the author, and this is what he says at the end. This is, I believe, a moral tale. It goes far to prove the revolutionary axiom that if you wish to destroy a nation, you must first corrupt its currency. Thus must sound money be the first bastion of a society's defense. So what Russell Brand is supporting here is the breaking of the rule of law, the breaking of property rights. He wants people to just stop paying their bills and not pay for something that is produced by a company that has invested billions and billions of dollars into infrastructure, into employing people. By not paying your bills, you're going to be hurting probably one of your friends who works for an energy company, or an engineer that works for British Gas. So it's the completely wrong strategy, and he's very misguided. So I want to go to a page here in this book where they talk about all the blame game that happens during a hyperinflation. It's on chapter 5, in chapter 5, sorry, it's called The Slide to Hyperinflation. And this is what Adam Ferguson talks about here on page 69. So, and this is for Russell Brand and his followers. And I also see a lot of other people on social media blaming just the energy companies as if they just decided out of the blue to basically destroy their customers. Why would you do that? Why didn't the energy companies do this, have been doing this for years, if they're doing it now? So it says here, it was natural that a people in the grip of raging inflation should look about for someone to blame. They picked up on other classes, other races, other political parties, other nations. In blaming the greed of tourists or the peasants or the wage demands of labor or the selfishness of industrialists and profiteers or the sharpness of the Jews or the speculators making fortunes in the money markets, they were in large measure still blaming not the disease but the symptoms, Russell Brand. Let's continue. It was significant enough that union demands were still for higher wages to meet rising prices rather than before all else stable prices and the stable currency. A few of the financially sophisticated could be heard blaming the government and the finance minister in particular, but a typical view was that prices went up because foreign exchange went up, that the exchange rate went up because of speculation on the stock exchange, and that this was obviously the fault of the Jews. Although the price of the dollar was a matter of almost universal discussion, it still appeared to most Germans that the dollar was going up. It sounds familiar, doesn't it, that the dollar is going up just like it is today? No, it's all other currencies that are going down the tubes. Not that the mark was falling. So there you go, Russell Brand. If you look at the rate, the sterling rate to the dollar back in 2007, 2008, £1 was buying over $2. Now we're almost to buying only $1. So our currency has been locked in half. It's been cut in half. And that's why it looks like prices are going up, but it's the currency that is going down. And I fear that we could see another halving in the British pound, and it might not take as long. It could be a matter of a year or two. We could be down to 50 cents, and Russell Brand will still be blaming energy companies for that, I guess. That the price of food and clothing, and I would add energy, was being forcibly increased daily. Not that the value of money was permanently sinking, as the flood of paper marks diluted the purchasing power of the number already in circulation. So replace paper marks for paper pounds, Russell Brand. So I'll skip here to the part where he talks about Dr. Rathenau. And who was he? Well, he was the foreign minister. And it says here, Dr. Rathenau expressly and publicly denied that the printing press had any role to play in that permanently spiraling sequence of events. And by ascribing the country's ills primarily to the unfavorable trade balance caused by reparation payments, he totally failed to understand the reality that the country, and this is for you, Russell Brand, and the rest of the public who think the government has to help everyone. The country was living far beyond its means, printing money to pay for excesses, which included overemployment, the inordinate subsidy of industry. Yes, and we're hearing industry as well begging for help. Yes, everyone is asking for bailouts here in the UK and probably in other places too. The import and manufacture of luxury goods for domestic consumption. Yeah. All the foreign holidays, that is domestic consumption, even though you're going abroad. everything financed by your credit card and cheap credit, and a grossly inefficient tax collection system. So to wrap up here, I'm going to say that if Russell Brand really wants to get to the bottom of this, to the root cause of what we're experiencing, which is basically the collapse of the currency. Yes, it hasn't been as quick as during 1922-23, but it took a while as well for the German currency to lose half of its value since the beginning of World War One. But once it loses half of its value, the next half can be lost very quickly, and that's what's causing all the rising prices, all the poverty, or they like to call it energy poverty. It's not because the energy companies suddenly decided just to squeeze their customers. Why would they do that if it was going to result in them trying not to pay their bill? It would be stupid. And the other thing as well, when you raise prices and you're making a lot of profits, if there is a real free market, Russell Brand, other people will go, or investors or speculators will enter that market because there's a lot of profits. And if there is true competition, those profits should fall, and consumers will benefit from it. So Russell Brand, you should focus on the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve. Those two institutions have the monopoly power to create reserves, which is just another term for money in the banking system out of thin air. And then you have the government. And yes, I agree, the government is complicit, but not with the energy companies, but with the bankers. And the government has this relationship with the Bank of England and the bankers, where they basically create all this money to buy government debt. And what happens when the government issues debt very cheaply? Well, they get cash in return and they spend. And that's the root of inflation. That is inflation itself. And the more currency units, just like they did in Germany in the 1920s, the more they create of this, and the economy doesn't keep up, the less value it's going to have, and the more people are going to suffer. Is it any wonder that 50% of our GDP is government spending? And it's going to get worse. And we got people like Russell Brand blaming the energy companies for this. Russell Brand needs to wake up, and he's doing a lot of damage because he's got a lot of followers. But it looks like YouTube wants to put that message across there, taking away the spotlight from the real culprits. And one last thing I would say, the central banks and the governments wouldn't be able to be inflating the system like this if the majority of the public, a lot of people out there, did not like inflation. They do like the inflation. And what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of people who are living off the government, a lot of businesses that are living off subsidies. So I think we're all to blame for this. Maybe not you and I who know about what's going on, but the general public don't even know it, that they're actually part of the problem, because they want the government to be there always to help them out when there's a problem. And just to give you an example of what I mean, I remember when iSave, which was owned by one of the Icelandic banks that collapsed back in 08 or 09, I think, and iSave was in the UK, and they had been offering very high rates of interest. So you had even local authorities putting community money into that bank. And I remember one of my neighbors was really happy because Gordon Brown bailed them out, because politically it was bad for him to let all that money go. But who paid for it? It was us. So that's what I'm trying to say. Even a lot of us are to blame for it. And yes, I'm going to put a link to Russell Brand's video in the description and up in the card. And you can listen to it and see what you think, if you agree with me or if you agree with him that it's only the energy companies that are to blame, greedy corporate leaders. And I'm not like saying that there can't be greedy corporate leaders, but they're just using the system. It's just a symptom of a bigger problem of the fact that we don't have sound money anymore. And that's it. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. And also think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And with that, I wish you all a great weekend. Take care. Bye.